What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson, joined by John Breech, as we got now emergency podcast as the Tennessee Titans have hired. According to reports, I don't know if the Titans have officially announced it. I'm sure Amy Adams Strunk is downloading Twitter as we speak. Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator. Johnny, what's up, buddy?
Brinson, you got to drag me out here to watch my offensive coordinator get stolen, and then he's probably going to move next door to me and just rub it in my face the whole time that he left the Bengals.
I bet he has a nicer spot in Nashville than you do.
You know, maybe he wants to live out in the suburbs, though. Maybe he doesn't want to live in a $5 million home. You don't know.
Well, what's your okay? Let me ask you this, because I think that this move, the Titans hiring Brian Callahan, is not to be rude, but like of all the coaching hires that we see this offseason, probably the least likely to move the needle. Callahan is not technically the play caller in Cincinnati, or was not technically the play caller in Cincinnati. His dad, Bill Callahan, with the Browns, offensive line coach. Great offensive line coach, former offensive coordinator in many spots and head coach as well. That we can talk about that in a minute. But like kind of a generic, I don't know. I don't think that this is not a splash hire by the Titans, but I kind of like the hire. I'm curious what you think as a Bengals fan. Where's your head at? Scale of 1 to 10. Meter.
Well,
meter.
Here's the double-sided I live in Nashville Bengals fan edge, and reading the local stories about the Titans every day, and it really feels like Amy Adams Strunk went into the search and was thinking, I want to hire the opposite of Mike Vrabel. I do not want the next Mike Vrabel. I want Mike Vrabel's a defensive-minded coach who wants a lot of control and wants to
is by all accounts a big, like, not a jerk, but very abrasive.
Right. And so now you bring in, I've got this offensive-minded coach now. He's going to work well with this front office. If you can work with the Bengals front office, you can work with any front office in the NFL. So you're going from one family-owned organization to another family-owned organization. So I'm sure that part of the fit really is part of the thing that drew Amy Adams Strunk to Brian Callahan. And then obviously you look at what he's done. His track record is just, it's interesting because I think that he kind of got lost up until probably December when Jake Browning came out, and we'll talk about this more. And, he went off and people are like, wow, this Bengals offense is functioning without Joe Burrow. What's going on there? Because you remember when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl in 2021, Brian Callahan was a hot candidate that everyone was talking about. It was, which one of the Bengals coordinators is going to get hired? And funny enough, none of them got hired because they've both been there for 5 years and they're both the longest serving coordinators. And so really, I think that Jake Browning run is what turned everyone's head and got him all these interviews. And here we are. So I think Amy Adams Strunk wanted someone who was opposite of Vrabel, and that is what she's getting in Callahan.
Our boy, friend of the podcast, Jordan DeJohnny, says the Bengals run is over. Are you worried that, obviously our colleague, Jordan DeJohnny, are you worried that Zach Taylor is now completely in charge of the Bengals offense? Seriously.
My God, it brings back our never-ending debate. Is Zach Taylor a good coach? No, the Bengals have been bracing for this since 2021. They thought they were going to lose Callahan. They thought they were going to lose their defense coordinator. They thought the fact that both those guys lasted till this season, I think, blew Zach Taylor's mind. So this team was absolutely bracing for this. I think that Bengals QB coach Dan Pitcher will get promoted to offensive coordinator. He's familiar with Joe Burrow because he's been there. He's familiar with Zach Taylor. So I think from a Bengals end, they're good to go. But I think the Titans part of this is where it's interesting because, as you said, this does feel like it's a little bit out of left field. I mean, why do you feel that way besides that he's not as imposing as a Mike Vrabel type hire? Well, if you're a Titans fan, Brinson, are you happy?
If I'm a Titans fan, I'm like, well, if I'm a Titans fan, I am. I think the thing with this hire is that whoever was being hired is taking over a rebuild and needs to work with Ran Carthon, not Ron Carthon, as I think I called him during the Mike Vrabel Fired podcast like 7 times. Brian Callahan is really young. He's 39 years old. He is 12 days older than my little brother, Charlie Brinson. Shout out to Charlie. Got his start with the Broncos in 2010. Really became has only been like a quarter, you can be an offensive assistant or whatever it is, quality control coach, etc. Was an offensive assistant for the Broncos from 2013 to 2015, Lions quarterback coach for 2016 to 2017, then the Raiders quarterback coach, and then has been the Bengals OC since then. Was the Raiders QB coach thing under Gruden? Had to have been, right?
What was 2018 he was there?
Yeah, right? Would that have been Gruden?
That was Gruden's first year.
Yeah, because remember, Bill Callahan was Gruden's OC, and then Gruden got traded to the Bucs, and Bill Callahan took over the Raiders.
And took him to the Super Bowl.
I will say this. If I would assume that Bill is going to come to Nashville with him, right?
I mean, that wouldn't be surprising at all if you're that.
If Robbie Brinson gets a head coaching job in the NFL, I'm going to come run the media for the team that he's working with, assuming that I'm still decent at my job, or that I ever was. But the point being is that Bill Callahan's really good at his job. One of the few offensive line coaches, or one of the few coaches in the NFL, along with Mike Munchak, I think, who can make a difference in terms of coaching up your offensive line and immediately making your offensive line better and making life easier for you. So I think that would be a nice add. And Bill Callahan has had an incredible coaching tenure. So if Brian Callahan I just feel like it's a very under the radar hire. I don't feel like it's a bad hire. It's just, there's nothing sexy about it. Right. And that's fine.
You look at who he's worked with. First, I'll say that if Bill Callahan does end up in Tennessee, that's a great get for Brian. It should be easy because you call up your dad and say, hey, why don't you come down here? And we talked about how smart it was for Antonio Pierce to bring in Marvin Lewis. You bring in someone with all this football knowledge as a first-time head coach. That is a huge thing. It takes some weight off your shoulders. It takes a little your own pressure off of you because you don't know what you don't know. And when you have someone who's been an NFL head coach to kind of lean on,
coach the team in the Super Bowl,
right? And you don't have to worry about your dad coming for your job because he's gonna be more than happy being your assistant coach, and probably just stay there the rest of his coaching days. So I think obviously bringing in Bill Callahan would be very smart if Bill wants to do that. And then the other part of this to me is a giant vote of confidence for Will Levis, because what have we seen on Brian Callahan? It is just, I mean, Peyton Manning raved about Brian Callahan. I think after they won the Super Bowl, this was back in February 2016, Peyton Manning said, this guy is going to be a great offensive coordinator somewhere, if not head coach. And that was 8 years ago. So we are talking about it took 8 years for him to get this head coaching job. And so you name the Lions. That's Matthew Stafford, the Raiders with Derek Carr. Now, 1 year with Andy Dalton and then 4 years with Joe Burrow. And that's it. He's going to develop Will Levis, and that's what they want.
Peyton Manning has also raved about Will Levis. He said that it's like, this guy was built to be an NFL quarterback. He's got all the arm strength, he can throw to everywhere on the field. And so if you're getting endorsements from both Peyton Manning, or if you're getting endorsements for your coach and your quarterback from Peyton Manning, that's typically a good thing. Now, I mean, like, not everybody who's worked with Peyton has worked, like the Adam Gase stuff in New York didn't work out. But I mean, the point being is, if Peyton Manning is giving a public endorsement of both your coach and your quarterback, and you've seen your new coach work well with multiple quarterbacks around the NFL, you know that he's got a pedigree in terms of, it's not like something is propped up. He's been around the game for his entire life. He is going to come in and work with this young quarterback. I think that and probably bring his dad, who's going to help the offensive line, which is going to help said young quarterback. I think that I don't think there was no way Tennessee was going to hire anybody who, like, They weren't going to go get Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick.
Right.
You know,
They were not going to get. Yes, they were not going to get another variable, like we said. Yeah.
Right, but this is a rebuild job. I mean, you are rebuilding. What the Titans over under is going to be 5.5 next year, 6.5, maybe. Your hand, okay? What happened to your hand, by the way?
One of those things that we talk about. I just came in from hanging out with my daughter, so I was straight up on the playground. I have playground hair.
You got Band-Aids on.
Oh yeah, I have my daughter. She told me I have a boo-boo, and now I'm wearing a princess Band-Aid. I do not have a boo-boo. But you look at again where Callahan's coming from, and you look at who he has coached under. You know, he started with Gary Kubiak in Denver. He's coached under John Gruden, as we just mentioned. Coached under Zach Taylor. We're talking about coaches who have been to the Super Bowl, so he's got to learn from the best and kind of digest all that, and he's going to create his own system. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what he does offensively, because you already mentioned Brinson, and as Bengals fans know, he was not calling the plays in Cincinnati. He was the guy, but he was Zach Taylor's right-hand man. This is the guy that handles a lot of the game planning. So when you see Jake Browning have a breakout, it's, oh, wow, this is you got to give the offensive coordinator a lot of credit for that. And so that's where I think Brian Callahan can be really good for the Titans. But it is, and we've talked about this before, if he calls plays for the Titans, you are putting a load on you that you don't know until you get to week one when you're trying to be the head coach and call plays for the first time.
I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break and then come back and discuss what this all might look like for Tennessee in terms of a coaching staff and how they build it out next.
The biggest event in sports is coming to the entertainment capital of the world. CBS Sports HQ will have you covered every minute, getting you set with all the critical analysis you need. Ready, set, Vegas.
All right. So Brian Callahan hired as head coach of the Tennessee Titans. As a Bengals fan, are you worried he's going to take anybody from the Bengals with him? And what do you think he sort of builds out his staff? You mentioned right before the break, Breech, will he call plays? He hasn't been calling plays in Cincinnati. I would think that he'd prefer. I mean, everybody wants to call their own plays. And by all accounts, Brian Callahan had a lot to do in terms of the input of the play calling and the setup of the offense on a week-to-week basis. Zach Taylor was just the mechanism for calling the actual plays during the game. Be very curious to see how he handles that, because I would not want, and this is not based on personal experience, obviously, but just having been around the league for a long time, I would not want to hire somebody who was coming in to be the head coach on the sideline on a week-to-week basis and be calling plays for the first time. That would concern me a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. And but you know what? I won't be surprised, because he was in Cincinnati for the past 5 years, if he sets up a dynamic that he had similar to what he had with Zach Taylor. So if he says, all right, I am going to call plays because I've always wanted to do that, and the head coach now, nobody can tell me I can't. So I'm going to call the plays, but I'm going to bring in an offensive coordinator that I'm absolutely going to lean on. I'm going to let him handle the game planning. Then I'm going to, look over that. We'll collaborate. We'll get that figured out, but I will have the final say on the play calls during the game. And as you said, that is a lot to put on your shoulders, especially as a first-time head coach. And so maybe he gets through the first year and decides, you know what, that was a lot. I'm going to be the head coach. I'll let my offensive coordinator call plays. Because I think we can both agree there is zero chance Brian Callahan is one and done in Tennessee. They are going to do a total rebuild. Right. I think this hire symbolizes that guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Derrick Henry are going to be gone. I think that they're going to get rid of as much of the clear the salary cap, make the team younger, and try and thrive under a first-year head coach. So I think they're just going to do – it's an experimental year. You do what you want. And, so I won't be surprised if he ends up calling plays and has a similar setup to what he had in Cincinnati with Zach Taylor.
Jordan Dejani, our CBSSports.com colleague, points out that the Titans are trying to steal Thomas Brown as their OC. Interesting.
That's a shot at you, Brinson. Shots fired.
I don't care who you take from the Panthers. The Panthers don't even have a head coach. I don't care. I guess he's technically the offensive coordinator. The Panthers are like double interviewing both their OC and DC. And this is actually a good point. Kyle Severin points out possible that Mike Munchak and Bill Callahan both come to the Titans. Mike Munchak, former Titans coach. I don't know if that would work out for him to come back. Maybe there's not enough ties there, but Bill, again, this is one of the interesting things about sort of the nepotism that occurs. And when I say nepotism, what I mean is the factual hiring of someone who's like dad coach in the NFL, right? So Kyle Shanahan has grown his own tree of coaches. He hasn't, gone after his dad.
He's watered it. He's grown the tree.
Yeah, but he hasn't he didn't get hired and be like, oh, I'm going to bring all my dad's friends in. But Brian Callahan's dad is still coaching in the NFL. He's probably going to come be the OL coach for the Titans. Their offensive line is probably going to be awesome in year one. And by virtue of all those connections, they can bring in a bunch of people who have experience coaching and are all cohesive and tight and trust each other. And you're not going to have, the Thomas Brown thing's interesting because I think that you're not going to get a Panther situation where there's a bunch of different competing interests on the coaching staff. More likely, you're going to get this group of people who are there who have known, Brian Callahan his entire life, are able to help him out and prop him up. I think there's a good chance you get a experienced head coaching staff in Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, and again, this goes back to kind of what I was saying about how many people he's coached under. I mentioned those guys and also John Fox. And you look at what he has done. Callahan was on 2 coaching staffs in Denver that went to Super Bowls. And then obviously the Bengals coaching staff in 2021 that went to a Super Bowl. So he sees kind of the cohesiveness, kind of what you need to do to build a Super Bowl team. So you're talking about a guy who's been at least an assistant in the NFL since 2010, and 14 years, he's been to 3 Super Bowls. So I think that's an advantage for the Titans to have someone so seasoned and also so young. I mean, this guy has 14 years of experience and he's not even 40 years old yet. So you never see that in the NFL, except when I think Kyle Shanahan got his first offense coordinator job with the Texans when he was super young. So the fact that he has got to kind of learn and grow under multiple coaching staffs that have, for the most part, all been successful, I think that he'll be very open to making whatever he needs to. He doesn't seem like a control freak where, I can't bring in someone who might make me look bad or an offensive coordinator who wants to call plays. Or I think he's going to hire. I think he'll end up with a good coaching staff.
You know who could end up with this coaching staff?
Ooh, I can't wait.
John Gruden.
Oh.
Or Jay Gruden. I mean, the Grudens and the Callahans are tight.
Is anyone going to hire Jay Gruden after his tit-tat with RG3?
I think RG3 is in the wrong there, but that's just me.
I don't know. We need to have a separate off-season podcast on that.
Yeah. We'll have Jay Gruden. Let's have Jay Gruden on the podcast.
Oh, and you know what? I'm going to mention this because old Jordan DeJohnny in the comment section, he pointed this out, and I meant to point it out at the very beginning. But this hiring comes on the 2-year anniversary of Brian Callahan's Bengals beating the number 1 seeded Titans in the AFC divisional round of the playoffs. So wonder if Callahan brought that up during his second interview. Take that, Titans.
So yeah, I think in a perfect scenario, you bring a bunch of experience in on your coaching staff. You need to, look, they got to hit on some draft picks. They don't have a ton on the roster at all. I mean, that's just the bottom line. You hit on some stuff in the draft. You develop Will Levis, and all of a sudden the AFC South is a problem because you have 4 good quarterbacks in there. Like Trevor Lawrence is the worst quarterback in the AFC South in 3 years. What a plot twist that would be. I don't think that's going to happen, but you get the point. All right. Harry wants a question about Dan. Anything else on the Titans? Before we go
I think the Saints have been pretty serious with John Gruden, so I think that would be the one thing that holds them back. But as you said, Callahan's are tight with the Gruden, so who knows?
Yeah, John Gruden's going to get back in the NFL in some capacity.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Bonus content. how do I feel about Dan Morgan being named the Panthers GM in Carolina? My buddy Drew texted me and said, tell me something positive about Dan Morgan. Well, one, he's incredibly handsome. Two, former first-round pick of the Carolina Panthers. Three, has had got a great pedigree in terms of what he's done from a front office perspective after he left playing the game. Dealt with concussions at the end of his playing career, but was in Seattle and was in Buffalo for a little bit. Has seen two organizations that thrive on player development and building things back up from the bottom. Has been a guy who I think is risen up the ranks. And while David Tepper isn't a long time, like this would have made all the sense in the world if Jerry Richardson was still the owner, because you have this guy who, was there when he was drafted him. I have, concerns and qualms about David Tepper and how long he'll let him operate because of how long David Tepper lets anybody operate. But I think Dan Morgan has shown that he has a very good pedigree in terms of working in a front office, and he's now also VP of football operations for Carolina, which I think maybe the most important factor here is the way they're restructuring this. And is this David Tepper saying, okay, you're kind of a fan favorite, former first round pick, 2001, long time ago, but still a guy who's had success in Carolina. And if is David Tepper turning over football operations to Dan Morgan and letting him run the football side of things? And if so, and he'll actually keep his mitts out of it, then that's great news. I don't know that Dan Morgan's going to be able to hire a great head coach. Well, I take it back. Sorry, let me rephrase. I don't know that Dan Morgan's going to make a splash at head coach. He might hire a great head coach, but I'm curious to see how this affects the direction of the head coaching hire. It would indicate to me, if you make somebody the VP of football operations and also the general manager, that you are giving them full control and saying, go fix this thing that I kind of screwed up. And if that's the case, then I will tip my cap to David Tepper, who will have learned his lesson. I don't totally buy it, but Breech, I think there's a chance that giving Dan Morgan control could be a very good thing.
Yes. And I'm just going to stick with whatever you just said, only to add that, look, it's David Tepper. You never know, because he has ultimate control. And if he thinks you make a dumb decision, he'll just veto it. Or if he doesn't like someone you're going to hire, he'll just say, go to the next candidate. So I can't imagine working for someone like Tepper because you actually ever have any control. He is not a hands-off owner. And one non-Panthers thing I will say, when I said I thought Dan Pitcher would likely get the job with the Bengals, one thing I did not know, this is something Rap Sheet tweeted out about 30 minutes ago, is that Dan Pitcher is actually interviewing for 3 different offensive coordinator jobs this week, one with the Patriots, one with the Raiders, one with the Saints. So he is a hot commodity, but I have to think, if you're Dan Pitcher and the Bengals say, hey, you want to be our offensive coordinator and you're
take the job,
stay in Cincinnati or go to New England, go to Vegas or go to New Orleans. I think your best chance at success is certainly staying in Cincinnati with someone you're familiar with and quarterback who has already been the Super Bowl.
Jimmy Marrow's profile picture, quite the thing, but excited to see the Titans run a modern offense is a very good point. Mike Vrabel, Arthur Smith, everybody in and around this Titans team has been run heavy. If Brian Callahan comes in and slings the ball around a little bit more, and you get some wide receivers, you get some pass blocking, you get some Will Levis, it'd be a lot more fun. It's hard to win in the modern NFL when you look at the Falcons, you look at the Titans. When you are a run heavy offense in the modern NFL that is hoping to just sort of keep things close with your defense and pound the ball a bunch, you inherently make your entire roster, your entire season more fragile, because you are willingly committing to a bunch of closer games than you necessarily want to be. Like you were saying, we're going to play every game close and try to find a way to steal a win. And when you do that, it's just making life harder on you.
Yeah, and I know that Titans fans probably got a little tired of the old 1973 offense that Vrabel was running, the old 3 yards in a cloud of dust with Derrick Henry getting all the carries. And then it was one of those things where if you jumped out to a lead on the Titans, you got up 10-0, you felt pretty comfortable you were going to win because the team that runs the ball all the time wasn't built to make a comeback. And, you forced Ryan Tannehill to throw it a lot. I remember there was a playoff run. I think it was the year they beat the Patriots in 2019, Brady's last game, when they won 2 games. They got the AFC title game to play the Chiefs, and Ryan Tannehill threw the ball less than 15 times in both of those wins. And that was like classic Mike Vrabel football, that we're just going to run the ball and win with defense. You will not be dealing with that with Brian Callahan. He will absolutely modernize the offense. I think Titans fans, your mind will be blown. You'll be like, wait, these are the things that other NFL teams run. These are the concepts I see the Dolphins run. We're running them. What? I think, the Titans fans are going to be shocked at what they see because they haven't really seen it since offensive fireworks during Vrabel's tenure.
I mean, or since
or Markey or
Munchak or who's before
Wisenhunt, Jeff Fisher. It's been a while.
The Titans literally have never had offensive fireworks.
You have to go back to the run and shoot Houston Oilers before you have Titans fireworks.
It is hilarious that we were looking at those old Titans coaches and we're like, so your coaches are now like Jeff Fisher, Mike Munchak, Mike Malarkey, Mike Vrabel, Brian Callahan. It's like a Mount Rushmore of unspectacular. Just like very generic. Like Frank Smith would have been perfect.
And also been
I'm not
perfect.
saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's very we'll see. Maybe Brian Callahan can change things up. All right. Anything else on the Titans or the Panthers?
I think that is it, Brinson. We got it. What do you give it? What do you grade this grade? What do you grade the higher?
B plus.
Ooh, a plus.
That's too high. B. I don't know. What do you grade it?
Well, and real quick, I was just going to say the last time, I'll grade it in a second. The last time the Titans hired Ken Wisnott was an offense coordinator, right?
Yep. Offense
coordinator with the Cardinals. That one didn't work out so well, but I think the expectations will be much higher with Mike Malarkey. I give it a B plus. I think it's smart. He's going to change what they do in Tennessee. He's going to change their offensive philosophy, and I think it's something that can absolutely work.
Yeah, I think getting somebody who can bring veteran, smart coaches into the building, stabilize things, and you start to build up. And maybe you land a quarterback in the draft and all of a sudden everything changes like it did in Cincinnati with Brian Callahan. Okay, that'll do it for us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Brian Callahan, hired by the Tennessee Titans. Emergency podcast for Breech. I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.